back to a real scrum, so far away. You don't need me.
The Van Astenwade's contract extension this morning. What have you seen from him just since he's been here the past couple of years, going undrafted and kind of growing into the player that he is?
It's what makes this league so much fun. No two stories are the same. There is opportunity for 4-year guys in our league to make a career in it. It shows guys' willingness to persevere. You get told no basically by every team in the league twice, but then you have the internal fortitude to keep working and believe it in yourself, and go out prove that you're a rotation player in this league.
Where have you seen him grow the most, just like in his game over the past couple years?
Just his understanding of how he fits. I think he is uniquely, for his size, a really good perimeter defender. He can guard different positions, 1 through 5s. We've made him, guard throughout his time here. And he does a great job of keeping them in front of him. He takes challenges, whether we put him on, all-stars, whatever it may be, point guards, he goes out and takes those challenges head on and has proven to do a pretty good job at it.
Has he got another one of those running dunks in him?
He's got plenty of them. Yeah. He's and that's the thing we keep talking to Dean about is like, he's just scratching the surface. We believe sometimes that he's a better player than he may believe at times, because there is more there. And I think, as his confidence grows and his opportunities grow, we'll see a lot more of those things.
JV, Donovan's a high usage guy. Same thing with Darius, same thing with Karis. What's the level of sacrifice required to make it work the way that you guys need it to, and how do you make sure that happens?
I think it's continuing to be who we are, right? We continue to preach selfless basketball and playing to your strength. I think through the first 3 quarters, it should be relatively easy, right? Because there's going to be more of a flow. There's going to be a ton of ball movement. The game's going to be playing, at its pace, at its tempo. The time where it could be difficult is when the game slows down, right? Like in the 4th quarter, later in the game, to make sure that we continue to involve everybody in our offense, and the ball shouldn't be, dictated to one guy and we're going my turn, his turn, your turn, right? So the understanding of how we create advantages and then we make the play that the advantage has created. Again, you think about the ball being in Darius's hands and he's playing pick and roll with Jared or Evan or Kevin, whoever it may be. The threat of having Karis and Donovan on the backside, defenses are going to have to make decisions, right? If they make the decision to go and help, then Donovan or Darius has to make the right pass to whoever's on the backside. If they decide to stay home, now they're working one-on-one opportunities, and that's the advantage. So I think that's how we're going to have to think about it, and it's going to take some time, right? When you have guys who are so used to having the ball in their hands, it takes time for them to get used to it. And then, as a coaching staff, our rotations are going to be important too, how we stagger those guys and play with different combinations also.
I know you've been around him a little bit now since he's been here, but when it comes to Donovan, is there something that stood out today on the first day of practice to you?
His ability to fit in, there wasn't a question about it, but like when you are a 3-time All-Star at the, level that he's at, some guys want to be outliers. What we saw with Donovan is his, want to be a part of the team. And not separate himself. So I think that stood out, and you just watch him, and it's right away. He fits with this group, and hopefully that continues to get even better and helps the chemistry with the guys on the floor also.
Has there been a message to the other guys? Donovan's the kind of guy that they haven't played with, the caliber player that they haven't played with. Has there been a message to the guys about how to embrace that best?
Backing up a little bit, there's some pretty good players out there on the floor,
sure,
right? There's all-star level players that are on that floor. So I think, the guys have a familiarity with, players who are that good. But when you add a piece to that, to something that has already kind of been established, can be a challenge. And our message to the guys who were here and to Donovan is they still have to be the best versions of themselves. We believe because they are so selfless and they play the game properly that, everybody will be able to fit in. There's going to be nights where, Dean Wade or Dylan Windler or Isaac or, Lamar, whoever it may be, where they may end up being our leading scorer because teams decide, they're going to do whatever they have to do to stop those other guys. So, our other guys have to be in position. One, the guys have to give it up. Two, the guys have to be ready to make the next play. And that's kind of what we think about is like we try to breed an environment where everybody feels like they can be the best version of themselves and play to their strengths.
JB, I feel like from the outside looking in, I think most people would say that it seems like 4 spots in the starting lineup are pretty well spoken for, and maybe the small forward position is one that maybe there's not as obvious an answer. What are you looking for at that spot, given the ball handling that you've got, the creation that you've got with your guards, and then obviously the defense that you've got with your bigs?
We're looking for who fits the best. And what we try to do is put together the best 5-man units that we possibly can. We feel like we are a deep team, and your first unit, second unit, third unit, once you make your rotations, we're trying to create, as strong of units as we possibly can. So it's not something where, we're going to rotate it or anything like that. It's something that we want to put together so guys have an understanding of who they are and where they fit and when their minutes are going to come. So whoever, can help that group be the best on both ends of the floor, like that's the group that we'll put in. And then that doesn't always mean that's the group that you finish games with. I think there can be 2 separate groups there.
I'm sorry.
Are you going to figure that out by the end of the preseason, or could you go all the way down to the regular season?
No, I mean, we'll have a good idea by the end of the preseason. We are going to experiment in the preseason. We may throw some wild lineups out on the floor because that's what we like to do. And then we'll get a good gauge of that once we get some tape and some film, and we go from there.
Who's in the running for that spot?
A lot of people. You want all the names?
Yes.
Jetty, Dylan, Dean, Karis, Lamar, Isaac. Yeah, we're all in the mix.
Do you have a front runner?
Nope.
JB, obviously Kevin Love is more of a 4, sometimes could even play 5. But would you expect for him to get minutes alongside a lot of the guys that are going to be in that starting lineup just because of the spot-up factor that he gives? You guys were towards the bottom of the league in terms of spot-up.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like your rotations, they don't have to be long runs, right? So and it was similar last year, Kevin can come off the bench early and he can play with some of the starters. The same thing is like he can be in your lineup to finish the game. So it's not going to be one of those things where, you're going to see a lot of blended lineups. Like we won't, our plan isn't to have a first 5 and a second 5. Our goal is to have a bunch of blended lineups so that we can be as threatening at all times as we can.
And you mentioned a couple of questions back the idea of staggering, in part because you do have 2 such high usage guards that are more than capable of handling the ball, more than capable of creating their own shot. With Ricky out for probably the first couple of months, is that something that you expect to do? I'm sure they'll play together a ton as well, but how much do you expect to stagger those 2?
Well, the goal is to have one of them on the floor at all times.
Okay.
So we'll figure out a way through our rotations, who gets the longer run, who gets the shorter run, and then when the pullback happens. But, when you have guys of that caliber, being able to have one of them on the floor versus backups, should be advantageous for your group. And I think that's kind of the way we're built, is we're built in a way where, whatever your top 6 or 7 is, like you can always have 3 of those guys out on the floor at once. Again, provided, the health, but that gives you a ton of depth.
We've talked a lot about the ball. We've talked a lot about the ball handling of those 2. They also can score a bunch. And then your 2 bigs both protect the rim and can score. So do you have like a preconceived idea or notion of what you need out of that? Like what's missing, with the one spot that you have open?
It's interesting because there's two schools of thoughts, right? Like you go back and forth and you want to see what works best. There is put your best and most talented players on the floor. Allow that talent, especially with our group, and what I really believe is, they have the ability to make shots. They have the ability to spread the floor and keep people honest. And then there is the, less usage route of a guy who is, a spacer, a ball mover, those types of things, because there are so many guys who can handle the ball and make plays. So, again, we've gone back and forth on that, I'll be honest with you guys. But we're going to give it an opportunity and see, exactly what works best and what is the most troublesome for defenses.
Defense is obviously such a big part of your identity last season. When you have this type of time in training camp, is there something defensively that you're trying to accomplish by the time training camp's over?
Yeah, guys have to have a clear understanding of what we're, willing to live with. And then how do we get teams to those shots or to those actions or whatever it may be. So the foundation of our defense has to be clear and recognizable to everybody that's over there. Where your spots are on the floor, the technique on your closeouts, how do you take away three-point shots? Like all those small things, guys have to be really, really clear on, because sometimes you're going to make a mistake, but that you're trying to take this away. So in my recovery, I just have to go get that done no matter what, and then the defense behind me can fix it. So as long as they've got a clear picture of what we're trying to force and what we're willing to give up, that helps guys figure out what we're doing.
And what we're willing to give up, do you have a few things that you're focusing on in training camp, or is that going to be changing as a season?
No, that should stay the same. I think like most teams, we want to protect the rim, protect the paint, and limit the easy threes. So I think we can go about it a little bit differently because of the Jarretts and Evans of the world and Rolos. Like we've got some great guys who can protect the paint without any help. So then that allows other guys to do more creative things on the perimeter as well.
Last one.
JB, as you were going through the small forwards, you mentioned Dylan, which may be a surprise to a lot of people. Like, what is it about him that has him in the running in your mind?
He's been phenomenal since he's been back here, starting after Labor Day. You watch the work he's put in, but you watch the guys that play pickup, and he's brought himself and his game to another level in what we've seen so far. And again, we want to give people an opportunity, and that's what this is about. And that competition is going to push everybody else to be better. And I'm thinking of it, and I know, obviously we have certain guys who have just earned it, but they're competing too, and they're being pushed, and they're pushing each other. So it's going to raise the whole level of the team. Imagine what your practices are like, but now you're moving into games, and everybody's taking a step up. But everybody's going to have an opportunity to earn it.
All right. Thanks, Coach.